Uh, oh. uh, 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 this is I can't even begin. I can. I mean, I can. I can. I totally can. Um, there's just like where even to start on this journey. Where even to start on this? It's on this trip. It's a trip. It's a trip. It's a total trip. Hi. My name's Charlie. Um, and I'm here to talk to you guys about 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 everything, about my Kundalini awakening, about the spiritual path, about where the soul and body and life interconnect. The path of healing and transformation and oh wow, emotional upheaval, incredible amount of emotional upheaval. Um, and it's so bear with me because this is the first time I've made videos, um, and I really just wanted to anyway. There's just it's hard to know where to start, but I'm gonna have a go at um, getting some semblance of order in. Um, so I had my Kundalini awakening about a year and a half ago, a bit under a year and a half ago actually, um, and it was a pretty powerful event. I was sitting in my car. I was actually coming home from work, and I was driving along, and it seems like just so long ago. Um, and it suddenly, I started to feel really, really vulnerable, really, really, really vulnerable, like a little child. And that vulnerability continued all the way to when I got home. I was living at a family friend's place in a bungalow in Melbourne, Australia. Australia. Um, and I had this incredible. I got there and I just had this. I was sitting in the car and had this incredible rush of energy just start to explode up the center line of my body, and it was quite disconcerting. It was a lot of anxiety came with that. Um, and I found this is just an incredible rush of energy, and then it came straight up out the top of my head, um, and I didn't know what that was. I actually filmed it, but I've since lost the film, so unfortunately I can't share that with you guys. But the process of then, I remember I got out of the car after that happened. It was sort of maybe like 10, I don't know, 20 minutes of this feeling. And I got out of the car and just intuitively knew that I had to ground. Mind you, most of this stuff I really sort of didn't really have a concept of so much at the time. But I took my shoes off and went and just walked in a bit of bushland. There was a park just across the road. And that was, and I just knew that that would help to just ground. A lot of the that process, then things started to sort of heat up. I see it as like it was an event, was one sort of catalytic event, if I can use that. But in it's actually part of a process that's been happening for a long time. And the more I experience and the more I feel into this, it's actually something that's been going on for lifetimes. And in the spiritual realm, there's a lot of talk about this process that is really been going on for in a past life. Someone's been doing some pretty intense spiritual practice in order to get you to the stage that your Kundalini is close. Your Kundalini is ripe to rise. Now, what is Kundalini? Kundalini is a force of energy, the force of life that in many esoteric religions and beliefs and systems is situated at the base of your spine. Now, when it's at the base of your spine, it normally sits dormant within humans, and when that can be awoken by a traumatic event, by a intense spiritual practice, by I mean, look, there's so many different things that can awaken your Kundalini. For me, it was actually I'm realizing now some sort of 7 years ago now, that I first had an initial spiritual awakening, and that spiritual awakening was when I went to India. And I went to India when I was 19. I'm 26 now, so yeah, 7 years ago. And need to move the body. Need to move the body. And the when I went to India, I believe it can also happen as well. So I should put in there that it can happen as well. Is that there's a concept called Shaktipat, which is direct transmission from guru to student. If you want to, we could talk about that in another episode, another video. But basically, that when I had that experience, I was camping in a commune in India, and I basically, over a period of maybe 3 weeks, it's just like this breaking down of the old concept of self, just this massaging of the older self into a space that they can then become receptive. For me, that's this breaking down of this old egoic self, where I was the center of the universe and there was no one else. It was like you can't really see other people's perspectives, to a point now where I was like, where I just had this sense. It was just like this melting away of this space, and it was really beautiful and blissful sort of time of not really having any. I was just in India, and then I went to I was camping with my brother and a few other people, some friends, and I there's actually what I in reflecting upon it, we met this amazing fellow, small Indian, northern Indian, sort of Nepalese guy called Edwin, who was just this master at all this sort of stuff. Like he was just, he had all these incredible sayings, and he just this amazing way of being, and really with so much love and compassion. He was also kind of tortured in his own sense, but you could feel now being in that space and being surrounded by so much love of different people from all over the world, and this sort of hippie, and experimenting a bit with smoking a lot of chalice, a lot of hash, and take a bit of acid, all this sort of stuff of like, exploring and becoming more open, and then meeting this guy really catalyzed a shift in my consciousness. And why it didn't happen in my brother or other people, well, that's just the way things are. Their journey is their own journey. I'm sure it did in different ways. In fact, it did totally in different ways. It's just this is the different paths that people take. This is the different paths that people take. And after that experience and meeting Edwin and finding this sort of space that I was in that was just really blissful, really open, and just going with the flow. There was a period of time I left India and went to Thailand, and then when I went to Thailand, I was just sort of going with the flow, and it was really wonderful going off on my own for the first time. And there was no real fear, there was no anxiety, there was a bit of like, I didn't want to leave so much the Paradise Beach, which is in Gokana, which maybe you guys, some people have been there. And it was leaving there and going to Thailand, where I sort of really opened up, and I was experimenting a little bit with some mushrooms, and I remember I took some mushrooms, had this mushroom tea, and it was just sort of like this magical feeling of like, whoa, sort of seeing the ground move, beautiful subtle sensations within my body, just generally having a really lovely time. Meeting different people and kind of just finding myself at maybe a little reggae cafe or something like that, and swimming in the water and just really blissing out. And I see so much now in that time where, I was in Koh Lanta, which is the northern part of Thailand. Southern part of Thailand, sorry, an island. And I then had was going to meet up with some friends in Koh Phangan. Koh Samui, which was a bit of a mistake. Because I don't know if anyone's ever been to Koh Samui, the place where the part where I went was not particularly was not particularly conducive to spiritual growth, let's say, and not really knowing at the time for me the sort of the space that I was in, and being quite open and actually quite receptive to negative energies as well as positive energies. I went and threw myself in a pretty negative space. Lot of social, like kind of crashing back into this old social crowd. This that I hadn't really realized that I changed so drastically in such a short amount of time, to all of these people, to all of it was like the whole group of the whole group of extended friendship groups, of extended friendship, yeah, group, that I no longer resonated with at all, and really the shift had changed so much my perspective, and yet I was there, kind of trying to be into that, and I was drinking and taking drugs, and oh, it really sucked. That really sucked, and it became really like it just shot my system. And I didn't really listen to myself at all. Didn't listen to, and didn't heed the sign. But it's like I didn't heed the signs that were saying don't do this. Even though I didn't want to go, I went anyway because I wasn't listening to myself, and that was really quite a traumatic experience, for me to really to kind of shoot back into that space, and it's from going into that space, and again, not listening to the body, and placing a lot of stress on the system, and also just like not recognizing the sensitivity to things that had happened. Not so much sensitivity to things, but just like taking on a lot of other people's shit. I ended up having a pretty strong and confronting trip on mushrooms again, where I really wasn't prepared to be shown that much of my my darkness, or my shadow self. We'll go into shadow later, and that became a real that was really scary, kind of going that far and not recognizing that you can do that, not on a relatively fragile space, not having the tools to deal, and being pretty frightened. It was very frightening, and I came back from that. I came back to society sort of pretty disjointed and pretty disjuncted, which caused a lot of stress for my parents, but also was this beginning of this. So my beginning to the spiritual path was quite it was beautiful for a little bit, and then it was pretty dark and challenging for a fair bit of it, actually, when I think about it. I went and that darkness really has been so really quite kind of shit. Shit. A lot of growth, but it was really shit. It was really I didn't didn't go about it very well, and didn't get on board. It was a lot of psychological challenges that occurred, and um, shit that began sort of unfolding, and a lot of fear to the whole to all of this stuff, to external signs. It was like my ego was still trying to kind of hide back in its little cave, and it wasn't until after, I went back into the grind, basically, because I didn't know how to handle. I wasn't ready to handle that sort of space. Um, and I went back into the grind. I went back and did university for 3 years and studied environmental science, and went and fucking did I just went and did went back and started taking like I spent a bit of time up at my parents' place and in Ocean, and sort of subconsciously or unconsciously developing some skills to deal with this newfound sort of sensitivity to life. And the that journey then led me to start meeting people that were guiding in a different light, guiding in a different sense, and being moving towards higher consciousness. But the process was it was fucking harrowing, man. I've taken there's still stuff to let go of there, really. A lot of pain that I then created again for myself. Oh, yeah, because that and that process was really quite challenging in its own right. But to get back on topic, the then finding yoga, and a bit of mindfulness stuff sort of maintained me, throughout the university and throughout those sort of different places that I went. And that maintained a certain level of balance, but still having all of this emotional upheaval and not really understanding what was going on, why I was so sensitive, why all these emotions were coming up, why this stuff was always sort of coming up and getting and asking to be seen and to be felt and to be dealt with. And I really, for a long time, I pushed it away. And I didn't want to deal with it. I just wanted to, I'd drink or I'd smoke. I couldn't really smoke weed because weed would just it would just exacerbate things. And that was the thing that I used to smoke a fair bit of weed when I was a kid, or not a kid, but teenager. And after that, after that experience, it was just like weed was just made you too sensitive. It was just like lots of anxiety. I realize now all of this was Kundalini, spiritual awakening, spiritual symptoms, and those processes. What I was doing. Wow, there's just so much to integrate. Spiritual symptoms. Let's go with that. Not until last year, or when I finished university in 2016, was when I started to intuitively sort of feel like I'd come to a space that I could start to deal with and start to step into this new self. And it became, I remember finishing university and starting to just have these feelings of like watching myself, of like observing this sense of ego and observing this sense of self that was sort of outside of myself. And it was sort of this gradual shift up, and still within the sort of paradigm of the social circle and experience that I was in. But as stuff started to fall away, I started to explore these concepts with more intention. I then wasn't without. I then see in when I came to finish university, I went up to my parents' place, and a place that I feel very safe. That's basically what I did, was to take myself to a safe place and to be able to go to into the deeper aspects of myself. And I ended up having an acid trip in the bush, in a very safe space. That was full on purge and healing session that I didn't really know what was going on. I just knew that there was something that I needed to get to, something within myself to heal, to access, to. It was so sort of just guided. I just felt guided to do that. And I went through this, this like day acid trip that was really super powerful, very beneficial, and really showed me a lot about myself and about the things that I fear. These aspects of myself that I fear, where I hold pain, where I hold on to past conceptions and limiting, where I hold pain. And that really showed me. I remember just going into that and then coming out of that and being quite it was very vulnerable, but able to just sit in this place of peace, just sit in this place of peace, and I could just be with it while a lot of very powerful emotions started to sort of come up. And these, I remember just not really starting to really want my alone time, really feeling like it was summer and I was with my family, but I'd really just cherish having time by myself, cherish having time to just do a little bit of do my yoga, do some stretches and just reflect. There was a lot of integration happening even then, even at the beginning of this process, and that really was starting to then shift into a more accelerated awakening. Things were falling away, emotions and patterns and knots, but just more of an awakening sort of understanding of things. And I then went into, it's really interesting how, how things played out. I was laboring 5 days a week. There was a lot of stuff that I was holding on to of my ego and my character. I was really fit, really strong, and being as fit as I ever had, but it was starting to come into my own personal power, really learning to surf properly. And finding that I could talk to girls, like I'd lost all this weight, or I slimmed up, just all of a sudden. And um, working, had all this energy to just like go and work, and then found that the more and more I was moving towards wanting to heal intuitively, just like getting these sort of, there were these things starting to happen. I'd start to have these intuitive senses that something was there, or something was, I needed to go to this place. That I remember going and starting to sing like crazy, just wanting to sing and make sound, and realize my voice would just start to, it's just starting to develop this amazing voice, this amazing ability to create to create song. And I'd never really sung before. There was times when, but it's funny how there's like peaks, troughs in the awakening process, or that has been for me. Bits where I get a bit of insight. Anyway, this is when stuff started to really kind of become more than I could, than was normal, or then was sort of like acceptable, when things started to really like. But then started to sing and going to dance a lot, and wanting to paint and delve into this pain and sit with these emotions and heal, basically. I also could realize that I started to not really be able to resonate with the people around me, with the people that I'd really held close and dear, and started to move away a lot from people, which was really, that was really challenge. That was really very. That was that was hard, because it was uncomfortable, but I was still holding on. I held on a lot to these different friendships. Held on a lot to these ideas about myself and about other people, and still hold some of that, which I've got to let go of. Really, I've got to let go of that. And then had, where was I? Came from that space. Then I was realizing, my passion to go and discover acting and theatre and performance, and this incredible drive to just go and do it. And so I started acting, started dancing, and singing, and wanting to sing and just be creative. And that, realizing my path, if that's a way to put it. And then feeling then the physical symptoms started to kind of kick in. Then it became like, well, I have my body, like I sleep bugger all, but still have shitloads of energy, and then tension in my body, tension in my back, tension in my bum and lower legs, just all this tension, and not really being able to ground. And I think I'm going to leave it there for a bit.